I'm going to show you 10 design elements that I wish I knew when I started Midjourney. These 10 design components will take your AI images from just okay to amazing. So I'm here in my AI art studio, and I have 10 elements that will take your AI images from bad to good. Midjourney design component number 1 are subjects. Now, subjects are one of the more obvious but very important components because subjects are the central point and focus of that image. Subjects can be a noun, so it can be a person, place, or thing, or it can be an idea, like love. So if we take a look at my art gallery, you can see the subject present within each photo. I can hit load more to view even more of my photos. And as you can see, in each photo, there is a subject that is present. In this photo, we have a Black Panther here as a subject. If I click off and go to another photo like this one, as you can see, we have cowboy as the main subject. So establishing a subject within all of your images is very important. So starting off, I used a very simple subject. Right now, our prompt consists of one word, and that is dragon. And as you can see, Midjourney will generate these 4 images. Of course, it will be different for everyone else, but as you can tell, just using the subject within the prompt, it's kind of boring, there's not much to it, and these images are okay, but they're not that great. So using a single word subject can work okay, but you need to work in coordination with a bunch of other items. And you'll notice how much this image changes when adding design element number 2. Design element number 2 is styles. Now when it comes to styles, I like to think of styles like certain types of art, such as low poly, metaphysical art, impressionism, surrealism, more of the technical art terms that could be used in your AI images. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If we click on this image in my art gallery, you can see that I use surrealism here and it generates a very interesting image. So in this one, I've combined a subject with a style. So I have a vintage car in the style of surrealism. Now let's add a style to our dragon prompt and see how much it changes. When I open up the image example for styles, as you can see, just by adding the style low poly before the subject to dragon, it generates much better images. So when you compare the two, we just used a subject here, and now we are combining a subject with a style. And so far, we've only combined 2 of these 10 design elements, so you can imagine what it starts to look like around design element 8. At this point, you might be wondering, what is this dashboard I'm using? And this is actually my AI art studio that I created in Notion. I originally just made this for myself, but I ended up liking it so much that I wanted to release it to the public, so that's exactly what I did. Within this studio, I have over 500 of these design elements in order to help with your Midjourney art. I also have 10 engineered Midjourney prompts that you can open up and use in order to generate awesome images. The great thing about these Midjourney prompts is that you can combine them with the design components that I've provided in order to get that perfect piece of art or that perfect image that you're looking for. And as you saw me using earlier, I do have this nice homepage gallery where I can quickly add new images and add the prompt I used to go with it. And as I said, once you open the components database, there's over 500 of those design elements. If this is something you want to get your hands on, then you can click the link in the top pinned comment or the description below. And on that page, there will be a video showcasing the template a little bit more in depth. Now let's get back into the video and let's look at design element number 3. Midjourney design element number 3 is emotional tones. So what do you want the mood of your image to be? Do you want it to be happy? Do you want it to be sad? Do you want it to be in a utopian mood? Do you want it to be peaceful? These are the things that you need to ask yourself when generating your AI images. This will completely change the outcome of the image. Let me show you some examples. So here's an example of using an emotional tone, whimsical illustration featuring a lion, and then it goes in some other items here. But as you can see, adding whimsical to this illustration did make it very whimsical. And when we take a look at the image example from design element 3, as you can see, I added somber before low poly dragon. And if we open back up design element number 2, as you can see, the dragon is much darker in its tones and it looks a little bit more sad and upset than these dragons up here. So these are the low poly dragons before adding the emotional tone somber. And after adding somber low poly dragon, as you can see, the dragons are dark, they're upset, and they just look a lot more cold than the above dragons. Here are some of my favorite emotional tones that I like using often. I have adventurous, solemn, whimsical, energetic, and romantic. I really like using these. It adds a whole new element to my photos. And this is within my component database that I have on my AI art studio. Midjourney design element number 4 is background and environment. Background and environment are very important because you need a place for your subject to be located, or you need to specify what type of background do you want your subject to be on. If we open up the image of this stallion, for example, as you can see, I have my subject here, a stallion, on a picturesque beach. And as you can see, It turned out to be very nice. It added elements of the horse drinking water, and you can see the beach and the ocean in the background. So here we have our somber low poly dragon, but now let's add a background and environment to this. So now we have a somber low poly dragon in a lush rainforest. Before it was just on black and white or blue backgrounds, but now as you can see, it puts this dragon within a lush rainforest here. And it did remove some of the amount of somberness of the dragon. As you can see, there are a little bit more colors, but the dragon still looks pretty upset compared to the image example in number 2. So this is before adding a background, and this is after adding a background. It adds so much more depth and it makes the image a lot more striking. And to be honest, that's why I love using my art studio so much, because I have over 50 backgrounds and environments to choose from, as well as subjects and all those other design components that I'm about to get into. So it's kind of fun mixing and matching these. You know, what if we did a dragon within a different background? Well, let me show you what that'll turn out like. And then in my components database, as you can see, I have a ton of different background and environments. It's the same with all the other components, but let's put this dragon in ancient underwater ruins to see what that looks like. So I'm going to paste in from my Notion account, ancient underwater ruins. And now I'm going to send this off with the exact same parameters as the image before. And as you can tell, it generated some very cool images, much different than the lush rainforest. Midjourney design element number 5 is color palette. Just like emotional tones, it kind of sets the entire mood of the image itself. Let me show you some examples. So for this image here of this Gothic cathedral, I used metallic colors. And as you can see, the image came out very gray, and I think it matches the vibe of the Gothic cathedral. But what would happen if I changed this to something completely different? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this into my Discord, and now I'm going to go to my components database and I'm going to look for a new set of colors to use. So I've just copied a new color from the color palettes, and we have bold and energetic colors instead of metallic colors. So now let's check out what this image comparison looks like. I'm going to send off this prompt, and I'm very excited to see how this looks. And as you can see, it generated something completely different from the original image. And to be honest, I do like this metallic look much better than I like these bold and energetic colors. Now let's take a look at our dragon example. So we left off on background and environment. And as you can see, the colors are pretty all over the place for the most part. It does a pretty good job at keeping them on track. But in this top left one, they have purple, blue, pink, and all of the images are generating different colors. For this next example for color palette, what I did was I added duotone colors. So we now have the same prompt with an addition of duotone colors, and as you can see, it keeps the colors much more consistent. There are some interesting text artifacts on these, but you can tell that it's wanting to use that green, lush rainforest color palette, even on the low poly dragon. So this duotone look is actually one of my favorites, so I decided to add it to our example prompt. To be honest, I like this without the color palette better, but I was just showing you this design example in order to express the importance of using the right colors. Midjourney design element number 6 is lighting and shadows. You know, what time of day do you want it to be, and what shadows do you want present? Let me show you some examples of lighting and shadows used in action. As you can see here, let's click on this flower image. We have a portrait of a flower, which is our subject. We have our color tone palette, which is rich earth tones, and we have the mood involved. What would make this even better is morning light. If you take a very close look at this image, you can tell that this is morning light shining through. This looks like when the sun is shining through your windows in the morning, which is the exact look that I wanted to go for with this flower here. Now, what would happen if I changed the lighting technique in this image? I'm going to paste in this prompt, and I'm going to delete morning light. And now I'm going to go look for a new lighting and shadows technique within my AI art studio. So we are going to change morning light to dramatic chiaroscuro, which means that it's going to be a very strong contrast between light and dark. So now let's send this off and see the differences within the image that Midjourney is going to generate. And as you can see, it completely changes what the image looks like. This is the picture of our original flower right here. There's nice morning light coming through, and it looks like a very tranquil type day. Looks like the sun is just rising. But then when you go to our new image that we generated, there is very bold contrast and the flower is standing out in a different type of way. Now if we go to our dragon example, we have a somber low poly dragon in a lush rainforest with the duotone colors. But now let's add a different type of lighting and shadow, one of my personal favorites, which is golden hour. Now on a few of these, Midjourney did a great job. It kept all of the elements of the prompt with the duotone color palette, and then it added the golden hour effect to this. As you can see, it adds a hint of orange signifying golden hour. I especially like the top right image. I think it did an awesome job when designing this one. So this is without lighting and shadows, and this is with lighting and shadows. It adds a nice sun effect. Now, before we get into our next design element, I wanted to mention something that I think is important to understand. It's very important to remember that you do not have to use all of these design elements at once. I'm currently trying to use them all at once in the example I'm showing just to show you the differences in the prompts and the pictures that it generates with those design elements. So it's good to mix and match some of these design components with other design components. So maybe mix a subject and a style with a lighting and shadows technique, and then next maybe mix a different subject with an emotional tone and a lighting technique. Something like that. You don't have to use all 10 of these in every single prompt. Midjourney design element number 7 is perspective. How do you want this image to be taken? Do you want it to be taken within an aerial view? Do you want a close-up? Do you want a landscape view? These are important elements of your image that you need to mention before sending off your prompt. As you can see in this low poly jellyfish in a crystal cave example, I used a worm's eye view. So it looks like the camera is now shooting from the ground as if it were a worm seeing these big jellyfish. Had I done an aerial view, the image would have turned out much different. Now let's go back to the dragon example and see how perspective changes this image. So right now we have the prompt somber low poly dragon in a lush rainforest, duotone colors, and golden hour. As you can see, it's done a pretty good job so far at applying all of those commands. Now let's say we want this to be a little bit more up close and personal, so we want to add the perspective of close up. Well, we scroll down, as you can see, just by adding close up, it makes this image completely different than if we do not. In my opinion, it makes it much better, and it brings out a little bit more of the golden hour effect. So this is without using the close up perspective view, and this is with using the close up perspective view. It makes this more of a portrait shot rather than a wide full body shot of the dragon. Midjourney design element number 8 is composition. Professional photographers and film directors use composition in order to change how the person watching feels about the scene. So really, the composition changes much more than what you would think. So this is 6 out of 50 compositions I have within my AI art studio, and I've just favorited these because I like using them most. For the dragon example, next I want to add rhythm and movement to the image. So let's make it look like this dragon is moving a little bit. So here we have added our perspective of close up. The image turned out very nice. But now let's open the image example for composition to see how that turned out. So this is with adding the rhythm and movement composition, and as you can see, I think bottom left and bottom right display it best. It's still close up, but it looks like the dragon is on the move. It's looking out of the frame, and it looks as though it's on the run or about to be on the run. So this is without adding rhythm and movement to the composition settings, and this is with adding rhythm and movement to the composition settings right here. To be honest, I think compositions work best with 1 or 2 or maybe 3 design elements rather than using all 7 design elements with composition. The composition starts to get lost within the prompt, and there are so many things flying at Midjourney that it doesn't really know what to do. Midjourney design element number 9 is textures and patterns. Now, I like thinking of textures and patterns almost like an overlay over your entire image. What kind of pattern do you want the image to be, or what kind of grain do you want on the screen? So here you can see some of my favorite textures and patterns that I've favorited within my art studio. We have mosaic tiles, parchment texture, foliage texture, and wood grain. Now, I will say that textures and patterns work much better when used with less design components. But if you look at our dragon example here, I've added it to the entire prompt to see what it would do to it. What I did was I added mosaic tiles pattern to this prompt. As you can see, it kind of put that nice mosaic tile pattern over the entire image. These images look a little bit sharper, and these images look like stained glass. So this is without adding the texture and pattern of mosaic tiles, and this is with adding that mosaic tiles texture and pattern. Now, the cool thing about textures and patterns is you can really get creative when selling actual products with those textures and patterns. In Midjourney, there is the tile parameter you can use to create seamless patterns, and that works very well whether you're designing clothing, wallpaper, etc. So I like using the 50 textures and patterns that I have in my art studio whenever I'm trying to create a seamless pattern or want to add some sort of grain over my simple image. Midjourney design element number 10 is inspirational references. This is very cool because you can actually reference and take inspiration from very famous artworks created in the past, such as the Starry Night, the Last Supper, the Mona Lisa. You can take these and incorporate your own elements within these art images. As you can see here, out of my entire gallery, this is actually one of my favorites, a dragon inspired by the Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh, Bold Atmosphere. So this does not work well if you're going to be adding all other 9 components to this prompt. I like to keep it simple with a subject, an inspiration, and an emotional tone. So as you can see, this is the Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh, and what I've done is I've taken inspiration from that, and I've put a dragon inspired by that painting. Now, obviously, nothing will ever beat the Starry Night, the original by Vincent van Gogh, but it's kind of fun to add your own little design and subjects within famous artwork. So from the mosaic tile patterns, I've actually taken out some of the design components in order to generate a little bit better of an image. And this is what the inspirational reference looks like plugged in with all of this data. I think the bottom left did a very neat job. I like how it tied in that sort of painting style. And bottom right also didn't do horrible, but for the most part, this didn't turn out exactly how I wanted it to. Like I said, I think it's better if you just used a subject with an emotional tone and then the inspired artwork. So those have been the 10 most important design elements that I think are important to master for better Midjourney art. If this art studio interested you at all, I will leave a link in the top pinned comment or the description below available for you to purchase this template. Once again, it has over 500 different design components, 50 within each of the 10 most important categories that I mentioned in this video. So when you open up subjects, you can see that there are over 50 different subjects, same with styles, perspective, lighting and shadows, and the list goes on. You also get this custom art gallery that you can quickly add to on your homepage just by giving it a prompt title. So here I would paste in my prompt, and then I would click this to upload my image that was generated using this prompt. And it's kind of cool to have that database of all of your favorite images that you generated with the prompts that you used. Also, like I said earlier, we have 10 engineered Midjourney prompts, so you can use these in coordination with the design components that I've provided you. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If it was of any value to you, please drop a like and subscribe. I would highly appreciate it. And with that being said, I will see you in the next video.